But Marilyn is here as vice chair of the Community Preservation Committee. She's been on that committee for many years. She can tell us.
22.
22 years on the Community Preservation Committee. She's also on the Conservation Commission.
22
and
years.
She's been on the Conservation Commission even longer, right?
22. Exactly.
Oh, 22, same number of years. That's all. Marilyn also, as you know, works in the town clerk's office. And does many other things as well. She was my son's kindergarten teacher a long time ago. So I think I'll leave it at that. So Marilyn, if you'd like to start, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure. What I've selected to do, and I hope you won't mind, is because I didn't want to forget things, and being 87, it's really easy to forget a piece. So I quickly wrote out what I'd like to say and then put in things that I thought perhaps you'd be interested in. And at the very end, feel free to ask me any questions and I will do the best I can to answer them. And those that I cannot, I promise you, I will find out the answers and we'll get back to you. So nobody will go left, not knowing whatever it is that you had asked for. The Community Preservation Act is a smart growth tool that helps communities preserve open space and historic sites, create affordable housing, and develop outdoor recreation facilities. After about a decade of work, the CPA was created and signed into law by Governor Paul Cellucci and Lieutenant Governor Jane Swift on September 14th, 2000. CPA allows communities to create a local community preservation fund. Community preservation monies are raised locally through the imposition of a surcharge of not more than 3% of the tax levy against real property, and municipalities must adopt CPA by ballot referendum. Westford adopted this in 2001 at 3%. As of this date, 187 municipalities in the state have adopted CPA. Of the total number of adopted communities, 34 are cities and 153 are towns. In Westford, there is a CPA exemption related to annual income earnings. A resident can find this chart at the assessor's office. So if someone is in any financial difficulty, they can be perhaps relieved of the obligation to pay this tax. Additionally, Westford exempts the worth of the first 100,000 of each home prior to assessing the CPA tax. The CPA statute also creates a statewide community preservation trust fund, which is administered by the Department of Revenue. This provides distributions each year to communities that have adopted CPA. Until CPA was enacted, there was no steady funding source for preserving and improving a community's character and quality of life. The state offers matching grants from the trust, whose revenue is generated from designated fees from the Registry of Deeds. Because Westford set the CPA property tax surcharge at 3%, the town is eligible for additional funds from the state that other communities may not be eligible for. The formula used by the Massachusetts Department of Revenue contains up to 3 rounds of funding to communities distributed by November 15th of each year. If I remember correctly, the first at least 5 years of our participation brought Westford a match of over $1 million each year. This year, 2022, because of the increase in fees at the registry, the distribution for Westford from the DOR will again be about $1 million. The number of communities that join affects the amount of distribution. And that's where our graph, if you would look at it, would show that our numbers had declined as more and more communities came in. It's like having a piece of pie and how many slices of the people that are at the table. Each CPA community creates a local community preservation committee on adoption of the act. This board makes recommendations on CPA projects to town meeting. Westford has 9 members. one each from the Conservation Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission, Housing Authority, Planning Board, and Historic Commission. There are also 4 at-large members. Each year, when funding is received from both Westford's 3% assessment and from the state distribution, 10% of those funds must be designated for each of the following areas: historic, open space, community housing, and the balance kept in the undesignated account. If projects are passed in these categories, the monies designated to them count towards the 10%. All other monies get placed in the undesignated category. Currently, the Community Preservation Fund has 3 bonded projects: the Town Hall renovation, which runs until 2030, the Road and Bush renovation, which runs until fiscal year 2039, and the Adams property land acquisition, which also runs until fiscal year 2039. Currently, our fund balance before anything is accepted at the next town meeting is approximately, or will be when we get our payout, $4,620,503. So that's one of the healthiest balances we've had in a long time. I would like to give credit to the information that I just spoke to you about from the State Community Preservation Coalition in Boston, of which we have been a member since its inception, and also to Jesse Baya, our administrator. I wanted to mention a few other things since I wrote this, and one is that we only consider projects for the spring town meeting, and that is because we do not spend money we do not have. Money does not come in until November, so we do not take projects for the fall unless it falls into the category of something that's an emergency. If a roof were falling in, if we would lose a piece of property, we would consider it in the fall. But normally we never do. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that the public can go onto our website, on the town's website. You can look and see some different facts and how money is spent. But also we have a needs assessment meeting in December when anyone in the community is invited to come speak to the committee to say what it is that they think that Westford needs, what it is that they see that is lacking. That gives us a sense of where someone might come forward with an application. There are 2 other things that, or 2 other funds that I wanted to mention. There have been many amendments made to this original law, and we have a conservation trust fund and an affordable housing trust fund for both of those committees, where money can be allocated through this particular process, so that if money is needed in an emergency, if money is needed for appraisals, if money is needed for something that we can't wait until the town meeting, if it falls into the categories where they can spend it, these 2 committees can vote it at their own meetings. They don't have to come forward for additional monies or wait until the spring. Jesse put together a very interesting document, which will eventually go up on our website. And he comments and he says, the town of Westford has appropriated $51.2 million in CPA projects since 2002. And the areas of spending are the following. And it's an interesting, I guess you'd call these a pie chart. So in affordable housing, 14% has been spent of the monies that we have allocated. In administration, 1%. In historic, 24%. In recreation, 9%. And in open space, 52%. That gives you a breakout of how we have spent the money over the last 21 years. In affordable housing, he says, we have spent here I go with my math, $7,005,208 in appropriations, of which we have done things like 35 Town Farm Road residences, that's coming up for $2 million. The Helena Crocker Affordable Senior Residence for $1.5 million. transfers to the Affordable Housing Trust of 1.5 million, and Stony Brook Residences for 761,000. Under open space, we have spent $26,688,912,000 for 46 Lowell Road, Adam property for 4.77 million, for East Boston Camps for 14.77 million, transfers to the Conservation Trust Fund for 2.4 million, and conservation restrictions for the Salt Box Farm and the O'Brien Farm for 1.9 million. Under historic, we've spent over $12 million for Town Hall rehabilitation, 2.3 million, Road and Bush rehabilitation for 6.3 million, 12 North Main Street, roughly 378,000, and roughly 50 other historic projects around town. Under recreation in appropriations, we have spent $4,797,000 and change for the Westford Academy synthetic fields for 960,000, which, by the way, is a project that no longer could ever be done because the year after we appropriated this, it was challenged in court and ruled that monies could no longer be spent that way. That's exactly what happened to us with the church on the Common when we put in the elevator and the accessibility the year after. It was challenged in another community. I think it was Newton, I'm not 100% sure. And when that happened, no longer going forward could money have been spent the way we spend it. But both times that we did it, we were allowed to do it and it was perfectly legal. Just the timing of what we have done in town and what we were allowed after. And then in administrative costs, we allow $15,000 a year for that. Comes out of a different line item. And we have never spent that. I think Jesse's maybe spent $7,000 or $8,000. But at the end of the year, that money is returned to the town and always reappropriated by town meeting for the different costs that we need, such as paying coalition dues, legal notices, paying the administrator for his time and things such as that. And the last piece that I have, in case somebody wants to know where the money is sitting, what's projected for June 30th coming forward is that we will have a total of $4,620,503, and that the bulk of it sits in undesignated funds, and that's over $4 million. And then we have money in historic of $381. I know this sounds like nothing, but that's not true. Open space, $676, and then community housing of $333,727. Anytime there's a project that's happening, whether it's in bonding or whether it's something that's a current year project, if we spend more than that 10% that we have to put into the account, we don't have to carry it on a line item. So that's why the numbers look so different, because obviously if we're doing something with historic or something with recreation, we're spending the money and we don't have to give them an additional amount of money. So that is my presentation and I'm open for questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I saw that Emily had put a question into the chat. Emily, do you want to ask that yourself or should I? She is
I
muted.
will.
Okay, thank you.
Marilyn, in 2007, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Friends asked, asked for CPA money for 3 towns, Carlisle, Westford, and Acton, $25,000 each, to fund the design of the quote unquote missing link, which had not been designed for phase 1 and phase 2. And we were awarded that in all 3 towns because it was recreation and historical, the rail trail. But you didn't mention recreation with the required. Is the recreation funds or just in the general?
Well, when recreation's under amendments, outdoor recreation is fully allowed. Originally, lobbyists for the group, and I don't mean official lobbyists, but people who worked, were certainly recreation people as well as the fact that I know that probably this started way back, maybe with the land bank, at Martha's Vineyard, when people recognized that they needed some other mechanism other than the funds just from the town. And everybody got 10% except rec. Later on, in an amendments, they set it up so that if it's outdoor recreational facilities, they also are entitled to funds. So yes, you could apply if you had something for that, again, it would certainly, I think, be an eligible piece, and if it
would
was,
have to be in Westford.
obviously, but the point is, but it would qualify.
And then what about, so there's
I
not
think
a
that's my
prescribed
opinion.
amount. There's not a required amount for recreation like the other three.
No.
Okay.
They were almost, if people will forgive my language, they were the bastard child. They really were forgotten for a very long time. And then that was corrected through, if you were to look at the site for the coalition, you can see all the amendments that have come, since the original law went into effect. And certainly correcting a lot of things for recreation happened, but not the 10%. So it's not mandated. But because we have the monies in the undesignated fund, that has never been an issue. And if I were to look at what we've done for recreation, we've done a lot for Westford.
And why did the fields not qualify after?
Because it was artificial turf. I believe that the legal piece was all about the artificial turf.
But even though it's an outside activity?
No, because I think there were carcinogenic issues for some people. There were all kinds of reasons why they didn't want that.
Okay.
It wasn't that it wasn't if we were putting in a turf field. Okay. It was what we used that I believe was the problem.
Okay. Thank you.
No. And I know that when on the state piece and dealing with the church, one other thing is that each time we have these projects, just like anybody else who's going to have something that comes before town meeting, you go before the FinCom and you go before the board of, the select board, and you present it because you want them to approve it, hopefully going into the book before. Right. And in the church's case, they did not. So there was an instance of where enough people in town agreed that this was historic, that it had nothing to do with the thought it was the church. It had to do with the fact that this was what the first, meeting house that Westford ever had was at the church. And so the votes, and that's what town meeting votes count, the votes, regardless of what had been recommended or not recommended by FinCom and the select board, didn't matter.
And did both of those bodies disapprove?
I think there was a struggle because there was the argument of church versus state.
Right.
And our argument was, this is the first book you got sworn in Westford is housed there, and this was the town hall. This was the place that everybody came to in the beginning. There was no town hall. And so that argument won, and it was fine. It held up. Thereafter, in another town, it was challenged. And when it was challenged, it lost in court. So if we had done it a year later, we would have to go by what the ruling was in the court. So it's been an interesting journey. But those are the only two things that I remember that I do know that there is a town that built sidewalks with this money, and I do not understand that at all, because that really comes from, town's money. But, there are some things people use it for that other people don't agree.
Well, I know way back when you couldn't have a town unless you had a called minister. So First Parish was essential for Westford to become Westford.
For everything, really it was. So it was on those arguments that, we argued the case.
Well, I have a question. I have
Sure.
my hand up. I don't know if I can move it around.
That's okay. I see it. Thank you, Judy.
First time I use my hand up. Okay. I have two questions.
And now, can you put it down?
How do I do that?
So I'll know in the future that you're not asking another question.
I'll figure that out after I ask my question.
Okay.
Two questions, Marilyn. The fields on Nutting Road, the soccer fields, were those done with CPA money?
Yes.
They're recreational fields, but I thought some funding came from the CPA.
I think, I don't know the amount, whether there was, it's been a long time, so I don't know the total amount for most of it, but a lot of money came from CPA. When I say a lot of money, it was over $100,000.
But I don't know where it abuts up towards the school, towards Stony Brook School. I didn't know if part of that was considered town as well as
Yeah.
rec committee.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I just know we did that. I just know
Okay.
we did that. I don't think there were any other funds for that. I can look that up if you're interested.
No,
Judy.
I was just curious. I was hoping that's where recreation
Yeah,
fit in as a category that was allowed.
yeah, and we've done other things this year. For instance, we've had Jack Walsh Playground coming, for us. It's interesting the projects that we have this year, and the Robinson Playground. My God, I taught at Robinson School, and that playground hasn't been touched. Certainly when I was there. So we are recommending that be done, including for handicap accessible, and So
The
we're
other
doing a lot
question
of
was on
that.
the Caldwell Banker site next on right off of 495. That's
What?
apparently going to be sold or something. Would that be eligible for CP? Is anyone mentioning that as CPA money
No one
for
has
open
come
space?
forward to us with any kind of project.
Yeah,
If remember, you have a restriction on that property.
right.
So if someone came forward with, I don't know, if they came forward with something, it would be interesting to see what they would come forward with.
Mhm.
It would, we can think about where the agricultural commission, where they have the community gardens. We bought lands and use that as a community gardens, and that's fine. So I don't know. It would depend on what the project was, but it would
Right.
have to conform to that. To
Yes,
that.
exactly. Okay, thank you.
Diane?
Back to recreation, Marilyn, the nutting ground, the soccer fields out here on Nutting are due for replacement. So are they, I think I got confused back and forth. Is recreation and something like that currently allowed? Is that's going to be somewhere in the mid, what did I hear, 10 million?
Here's the dichotomy. We're not to supplant the capital funds that should be spent from the town, in different areas. And one of the things, since we notice that so many of these places are coming up, like the Jack Walsh Field and the playgrounds and things like that, is we have directed Paul Fox to go back and have discussion as to whether or not the town is appropriating enough money to do what they need to do.
Okay.
So we can't supplant that, you know what I mean?
Right.
So we put it back in their lap.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that every court or every recreational place is going to be done by us now. We have done it. We have recognized what we need to do, but we've also said, look what's happening. You need to put this back in your program.
No, I completely agree. I just was blown away when I heard the estimates that this was going to cost us. That's all. And they were close to 10 million.
Let me put it in perspective. When Bob and I were healthy and young and we went to the Caribbean and we rented a car for 2 weeks, it cost us, I think, $450 for something like 12 days of a car rental. My son was in Florida for 8 days. He spent $850. Okay. I know people who have gone away and spent $1,100 on maybe 10 days. Nothing looks like anything anymore. So you're in those estimates now. I mean, go do something for your house. Nothing is anything I recognize, Diane, and certainly those numbers now are worse than they were.
Yeah, much worse. I just was surprised at the potential, and that was, I think, a year ago. So I don't know where that figure may be now. So that's all.
I don't know, but if we looked at Jesse's chart about what we did with rec, what did I say it was? It's only 9% out of 100 that we have of funds that we have allocated to them. And certainly the open space of 52%, we really kept, of course, and that of course is because of the price of what it costs to do open space. I mean, you buy land, I mean, but anyhow, it isn't that everything's going to come down the pike and we're going to say yes. Same as with Healthy Lakes. Healthy Lakes we've supported over and over again. They're going to have to find a mechanism to support themselves because they can't be just carried totally by us. It's how you grow. That's what you learn, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the way I see it. That's the way it looks.
So anybody else have questions? Because I have a few. Oh, Judy again. Good. And your mic is off.
And out. Okay. dealing with the recreation, it sounds as if in the fields on Nutting, the community funds can be used, CPA funds can be used to install or create the initial thing, but the maintenance of it belongs to the town. Is that what you were saying?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yep. Okay. That was my question.
Well, okay, I've got a few questions. One, I think we could use a refresher also on the rules for town meeting approving community preservation recommendations aren't the same as any other, anything else we vote on. So can you review that?
I don't know it well enough, but if you're referring to town meeting cannot change, and I do know that they can't, you know how we put in different phraseology, or we add things, or we make, you can't do that. You vote up or down, you can give less money, you can't give more money, you know what I mean? There are parameters. If you want me to find that out, I can find that out for you. I don't know what those parameters are, but I do know, yes, that is correct. And that's probably from state law.
Sure
I don't
it is,
think it has anything to do with our local,
Right.
you know?
I think what you just said is exactly the case, is the way I've always understood it, is that town meeting can only vote on recommendations made by the Community Preservation Committee. You can't come to town meeting and propose something to spend the community preservation money on, which you can with the rest of the budget. Anybody at town meeting can get up at town meeting and say, I want to spend X amount of dollars on anything, but we can't do that with community preservation money.
That's correct.
Right. And I think, yes, we can only vote it lower.
Right.
We vote it down. We can't vote more money for
correct.
any
I'm
project.
pretty sure of that, but I can double check that.
Okay,
I'm happy to do that.
thank
Lynn?
you.
Lynn,
Yeah,
I think that's what Ellen Hardy did at one of our recent town meetings with the bathroom building at the academy.
The first time when she spoke against it,
Yeah, and then she wanted to reduce the funding or not.
so
use
you
it.
couldn't build it. So you probably couldn't have built it. I don't
right,
believe.
right.
Right.
So yeah, you can vote less money, but you
Right.
can't vote more. So
So what happened there was that it was brought back again and then it was passed.
But that's pretty unusual. I think the town usually trusts the CPC completely.
Yeah, I think, it depends on who your audience is. It depends on, how well informed everybody is. I think that I think it's our job and the job of whoever's putting in through that application to educate the public about what it is that they need and to get their people out. I think you had to vote from the church because I think everybody from the church came out.
But also in the application, at town meeting, you don't read the application. You read the
No.
topic and then
No,
we
but
trust.
those applications would be available to the public.
Right, but we have to trust you on that at the town.
I
meeting.
think there has been, and I agree, I think there's been a significant change in the tenor and the look and feel of the voters. Because I agree, they used to not rubber stamp, but they would trust whatever you said, Marilyn, right? Whatever the committee said and agree to it. I think all around, all of that has changed, not just,
I see it. I don't see that as much as you're saying, but
okay.
I think there's, well, the way I feel is that there are certainly a group of people who are dedicated to wanting to save the money for open space. And they don't not necessarily want to see the money spent in a different place. Okay. Or don't give the value, let's say, to recreation that they do to the other. Now, I can see in the beginning when everybody coalesced, came together, and I think it was 100% voting at the time when East Boston Camps was bought. I think that was a unanimous decision from the entire, one of the rare times. So I think that's what we're meeting. I mean, if someone has and I don't know, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I don't see a lot of resistance still in 22 years. I do see positions. I don't think that's as important, and that's not where our money should go. We should save it for. And if that's the case, that's one person's opinion or 10 people's opinion. But that's when, if you really believe in a project, you get your people out. Because town meeting, I tell people, when you come to town meeting, you can never leave. Because this can be reconsidered. You cannot get up out of your seat. You stay there for the day until the end of the day, I think you can go. I don't think they can flip it anymore.
Hold that thought, Marilyn.
At any rate, I'm more optimistic that I think people are pretty good about.
Right.
Mostly.
So, okay, I've got a question, which is also, I mean, I know well, I'm not sure I know the answer to this one, but I think people should know is you described what makes up, who are the members of the Community Preservation Committee. But for the representatives of the various committees, like you, are you appointed by your committee or by the select board?
I'm appointed by my committee. My committee makes a recommendation and says, we'd like Marilyn to continue doing what she's doing, and then that's told to the select board. Okay,
Mhm.
but it's not voted on again. Same is true for affordable housing, so that the appointment is made by the committee. The appointment is not made by the select board. But
Okay.
the 4 at-large seats come through the select board.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Okay, so, and those are appointed so what you're saying is the representatives from the various committees have unlimited terms?
No, every
No.
3 years.
Oh,
Every
okay,
3
I'm
years.
sorry, misunderstood that. Okay,
Sorry, it's every 3 years.
every
So
three,
for
so
instance,
everyone has.
It coincides, it coincides with my term coming up again, where I had to decide if I want to say yes, and my answer is yes, but of course I'll be 90 when I'm finished with this one. So just like that 3-year term, so it would be the same thing.
Okay.
They will vote on, but it'll be a separate vote at the table. It will be a clear vote at the table that they're willing to let me represent them.
Committees, do they tend to rotate that liaison job?
They haven't done it. No one's tried to, I've never had a competition, let's put it that way. I think they usually are happy to have whoever there. Most of the people that I've served with on the CPA, unless they've left town, have stayed. It's a very pleasant committee. I mean, probably is one of the nicest committees I've ever worked on. And maybe part of that is because it's very independent. I can't, I mean, it's true that we have some parameters, but it's very, very independent, and it's very nice that way.
Well, you're dealing with a different pot of money too, and there's not really competition for that money.
There could be if we had 2 big projects. I mean, anybody can put in applications. It's never worked out that way. It's been very fortuitous. It's just, I don't ever remember any craziness. I mean, other than the fact that there were feelings about the turf field because it was artificial, and people talked about carcinogenic effects, etc., not necessarily proved. And then the church, which was, church versus state, which was the only reason I believe that select board and FinCom chose to either remain neutral and not vote on that, because they were on the fence with that.
And what's Tootie's?
Tootie is chair.
Is that an independent of a committee? She is just chair.
She's at large, and she was elected, and she stayed that way. We don't tend to do much changing on my committee.
So when you talked about the various projects that were bonded, my memory was that wasn't East Boston Camps bonded? Have we paid that off?
Paid it off. It was 50. I'm on 22 years. I think the bond was 15 years. I'm not sure.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that was paid off. Okay.
Oh, I like that.
There again, and depending on the amount of money we have, like with Town Farm Road, we were looking at bonding. Well, that may not be the case. We might have enough money not to have to do that.
And what about the O'Brien Farm? Was that bonded or?
If I read it, I mean, I don't remember that off the top of my head.
No, it wasn't on your list.
So if it wasn't what I said to you, then no, we only have currently we only have 3 things that are bonded. One is the Adams property. I don't remember what the other 2 were.
Road and Bush and Town Hall.
Okay, so there you go. And those were like in 30 years. Those were long term.
Mm-hmm.
And there, I'm sorry, I was going to say there we did some things, not everything. For instance, like the elevator, the handicapped access piece. Those things always come into it.
Okay, Denali?
Hi there. My question is, since we have bonds that won't be paid off until 2039, which seems like a long time away, are we better off paying that a little bit faster?
I think that's up to like Dan and the finance. I mean, they have, I know that they had a bond and they stopped the bond, they ended it and then he paid it off and then borrowed again at a cheaper rate. So they're always on the lookout for that, Denali. I know that if it's possible, we may have the ability not to have to bond Town Farm Road. We might be able to have the money in the bank and not have to do that. We didn't expect to have this kind of money. Okay, we didn't expect to have a 42% return. That's because the registry went up in number and as to what their fees were, and our amount was much higher. So we didn't expect to get this amount of money. We were down to something, I'll make it up and I'll say like 17% we were getting as a match for money. In the beginning, we got 100% match, but there weren't that many communities. Now you've got a number of communities, so it's that pie at your table, If you have 10 people eating out of a 6-piece pie, they're going to get a lot less. But I agree with you. And if it's ever possible to do that, they do it. Okay, but that's way beyond my pay. Okay, I'm lucky I get put on the computer. Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Is that up? Emily, are you, yep.
Marilyn, when you say that the registry has upped their whatever, is that the percent that goes to CPA when you sell your house? Is that larger now than it used to be?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I know whatever it is they're paying, and I thought it was in Boston. I'm not sure. I can find out for you, Emily. But whatever it is that you're paying, I'll find out more exactly what that money is. But whatever that money is, so let's say I'll make it up. If the fee was 25, maybe they made it 35. I don't know what the fees were, but collectively, it made a huge difference. So that when they had the distribution, they had more money in the pot.
But isn't it based on your house sale price less 100,000?
That's local. We're talking about the money from the Department of Revenue.
Okay.
That's why the 3% was so important.
Yeah.
Okay, because there are 3 times that we get money, or 3 pieces of monies that come from different places. And we can only get that because we have the 3%.
Oh, wow. So the towns that have 2 and 1%.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think next door to us in Chelmsford, I think they have 1.5 or something like that. And I never understood it. Never.
I know we were rare at the beginning to vote 3. That was rare.
I don't know that either. I hear you. I don't know that.
But the law was written, as Marilyn is basically saying, there was an incentive in the law to encourage cities and towns to go with the 3%. And the incentive was you'd get proportionally more money.
Right. You get a third payout. There's a third payout. And maybe it's the surplus. I'm not sure where. Okay. But maybe it's surplus that they have. But whatever is in that little piggy bank, you can only have it if you're paying 3%.
Right.
Good for us.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think we have done extraordinarily well. I think if you would really look at every single project, we have a lot to be proud of. Because when I moved here, it was 52 years ago. And 52 years ago, 8,000 people lived in town. And now you have over 28,000. And if you look at how much land in those days, I think 87% of the land was unused. Today, I don't know if we have 14% or something, some small number like that now. And a lot of it's marginal, So we have managed to I think we have over 2,000 acres in open space in Westford, between the Conservation Commission and in other areas. We have managed to keep our buildings up. We have managed to do a lot of wonderful things that made Westford so special. And this particular, mechanism has made all the difference in the world. So it was a very smart move for Westford. But that's one woman's opinion.
Well, I don't see up Denali. And then Vicki.
Are there currently any parcels that people have applied to the CPA to preserve? open
I'm
space.
not aware, but Peter Mala would be the one to ask because they do a lot of the quiet negotiating. I don't know. I mean, like the Adams was a big piece that they had to work on that for a number of years. So I don't know if there's anything else in the works that's out there, but Peter would know, a call to him.
Peter,
He could tell
Peter's
you.
the chair of the Conservation Commission.
Yes, but he's also on one of two people or so that do this quiet dialogue with people when they, bring projects forward.
Okay.
I have noticed driving around town that there's a lot of building going on. And there's still a lot of land in town. And it, of course, it saddens me. It saddens, everybody wants to live in the last house that was built in Westford. I'm just interested that there aren't people who are pressing to preserve more land.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fiscal piece too. It has to be someone who's philanthropic as well. If they donated, recently we had someone put, was it in the center? There was a huge parcel, I can't think of who it was, where somebody's preserving it for the town of Westford. So there are those times when things like that happen, but then, other people use it as that's what they're gonna live on.
Yeah.
So. Can't
Vicky?
fault anybody. I think we've done a pretty good job.
Yeah. Well, actually, my question was sort of dovetails off of Denali's question. She just beat me to the punch because, as I recall from town meeting, the first time that the bathroom thing didn't pass, one of the objections somebody raised was because they were concerned about having money to be able to both do the affordable housing and open space. And I just kind of struck me at that time of, well, how much more open space can we purchase? Like, are we, I was just, relative to what Denali just asked, I was actually curious as to, well, how much more is there available? And then what happens once we sort of would we ever get to the point of maxing that out? And then what happens to those funds? Are we able to divert those funds to other things like more recreational or more historical?
Well, you'd have to keep a 10% every year, bank account, even if you never spent it. But you would obviously, if you weren't spending 15 million on East Boston camps, you know what I mean? And you were putting only 500,000 or whatever the number would be in the bank, yes, you'd have the balance for historic. But look at the size of Rodenbush. And look at the size of Town Hall to have been able to keep these buildings beautiful. I don't know anybody really who doesn't come in to Town Hall and talk about how lovely that building looks. And it's a lot of pride when you think about it. And that's not totally CPC funds, but in a lot of areas, like the archives and I know the elevator and things like that. And then Rodenbush, that's pretty much CPC. For our school roof, the roof on the historic building, on Boston Road, the stairs, the roof, all of that, on the museum. So think of that cluster. Think of how much we've done in there. Now we're doing the windows in
Library?
Parish Center, right?
Right.
So think of that small area that we've kept beautiful.
Yeah. And I think that's a little like, that was my concern when I heard these objections, is like, you're not wanting to spend the money on the bathrooms because there's the possibility you might have to buy land. So, the same thing applies here. We've kept all those buildings pristine and beautiful and all that. I just would fear that like somebody would go, well, I don't want to vote for that because, oh my God, we might have land we have to purchase.
We still have money, but you still have money.
But I think the average person at town meeting may not realize that.
We'll tell them if I'm sitting in the first row. We'll tell them.
Right.
But I know, but you're right. But that's where education comes in. You know what I mean? So maybe we need to do a better job of educating.
Okay. Emily?
When you were listing everything at the beginning that the town's done, I thought
That's
that would be a
little
great
bits.
presentation. Yeah, you, Marilyn.
Yeah, but just that little bits is all I listed. Just a
Right,
couple of
but
things.
any of that is education to people at town meeting. And so it would be nice, I don't know when, like if we, I don't know, sometimes
We're gonna put a lot of this on our website.
Oh, good.
And then we can direct people to that, especially new people who come in who don't know. Because that's where I find the questions are coming from a lot of times.
Mhm.
And I
You know?
think if we built out, we'd have people doing what's happening in Concord. You know, people would buy small houses and put big ones on them and ask for variances. I don't know.
I don't know.
We'll see.
Well, the only thing missing in town that I always wished we had was 2-acre zoning, but that's a long ways gone.
Yeah, really.
I've
Well,
got a question. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say,
Um,
I'm happy to say I'm probably on one of the few parcels left that is on 2 acres.
Oh, wow.
There's actually quite a few.
I
There's
have-
actually quite a few, but I
It's
wanted to
not-
ask a question. I'm sorry.
It's not mandatory.
No.
No,
I wanted to ask a question about the $100,000 exemption, that when the 3% surcharge is calculated, they basically subtract $100,000 for the value of your
yeah,
house.
if your house is 800,000, it's on 700,000 you're paying. And I believe that was a state exemption and we are doing it, but
Okay.
not something that Westford did itself.
Okay, so because that's an interesting point, is that Westford adopted, the Community Preservation Act back, it's over 20 years ago now.
Right.
20 years ago, $100,000 was a good percentage of
Exactly.
the average price of a house in Westford.
Correct.
It no longer, the point was to try to mitigate the effect of the surcharge on people with less expensive houses.
Right. Now
And now $100,000.
is a joke.
I mean, if you compare how much a house in 2001 was worth versus what a house is today.
Lynn, I was going to just
Well,
say,
so my question was that, so you think it's actually state law that limits it to
I
2,000?
don't think we made it up. I think that came from state law.
I wonder if there's any push to the legislature to change it to 200,000.
I haven't
Well-
heard that, but
Yeah, well, could you confirm that the $100,000 is actually the state law?
you know what would be useful for me, Lynn, if you would send me a little note with a couple of questions that you want, or anybody send
Okay,
it.
that's the only one I can think of, but okay.
Anybody has any questions I haven't answered properly or
Okay.
don't know, I'd be happy to, explore it for you.
Or you can just send it to the league or to me, and I can pass them on to Marilyn if you don't.
Once I have
them
the
to us.
answers. Once I have the answers.
Okay,
Okay, I mean, you
and-
look at the questions, send them to me, and then I'll send them to you.
okay. Denali?
The reason that I support the 100,000 is that it just seems to me anybody that can afford an $800,000 house should be able to afford that extra 3%. And the other thing I have to say is I live in a very modest house, and I'm really happy for that. That's about $100,000 is about 10%. No, it's about a third of the value of my house. I'm really happy to have that deduction.
Well, that's exactly the point. I mean,
Yeah.
so it helps,
Yeah.
it helps somebody with a house that's worth less, and you assume they can't afford it, much
Yeah.
more than it does the person who can afford the $800,000 house.
But I would tell you that I bought my house for $30,000.
Yeah.
I look at the house across the street, which is $1 million, and it's like far cry from what I bought the house at. It's worth a lot more today than 30,000, but
Right,
times have changed.
right.
Oh, they have indeed.
You'd think that 100,000 built into the law, there would have been something along the lines of a cost of living increase, or something that would have been an adjusted rate or adjusted
Right.
amount.
Diane, when they put this in, I'm sure that, and I don't remember, but I mean, I am sure that they bucked heads in a lot of places to finally get this law in. I'm sure they were thrilled to have the 100,000.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That necessarily would they build in things that would make people maybe not adopt the law. Do you know what I'm saying? Now that it took all these years for the money in the registry to, for them to increase that,
Mhm.
to fix the problem of the fact that, sure, when Westford came in, I don't know, make it up, maybe 30 towns were in it.
Mhm.
Now you have maybe I think we have something like 365 towns and cities in Westford.
361.
361.
351.
352.
351.
351, 352. Okay,
It's about,
so we're a third, maybe have it, or whatever numbers I threw out there, but I don't understand why a town doesn't have this. Of course, now if everybody's hurting, they're not going to want to add anything. I mean, look at us. I mean, we have stormwater management things that we didn't have before. So you always have one more thing that maybe knocks something that's good out of the box. So we did it at the right time,
mhm.
but just one woman's opinion.
Are there any other questions? So I'm
Kathy
gonna,
Lynch's hand is raised.
I'm sorry, who?
Kathy Lynch?
I
Kathy,
don't see that. Okay, how, it's funny, you can see that and I don't.
I don't see it either.
Oh, that's funny. Well,
I'm
what can I
sorry,
say?
so Kathy, and, would you let, Kathy, do you have a question?
No, I actually don't. I think that I see that her hand is up, but not mine.
Okay, I didn't put mine down, but your hand actually is raised, Kathy, and I just lowered
It's
mine.
very funny. I
Okay,
don't know
good.
how you can see that and I don't.
That's
I
weird.
don't either.
I think you're seeing things.
It's down now.
Okay.
Kathy's is down now.
Okay. I'm probably looking at the wrong thing. So thank you. I did, somebody mentioned Caldwell Banker, the Caldwell Banker building. So if you haven't been reading your bulletins, your e-bulletins from the league, we are trying to organize a forum about that building because we've been hearing a lot of rumors. Well, one thing that's not a rumor, it is being sold. We know that it is going to be sold. So which we've been hearing a lot of rumors and people are asking like what can be done there and what can and cannot be done there based on the zoning and the variances and anything else that's on that building. It's a historic structure. It goes back to at least we think the early 19th century. And so we are trying to organize a forum to have Jeff Morissette, the Director of Land Use Management, to come talk to us about, and anyone, the public, to explain what are the parameters around that building, if anybody, whoever buys it. But we're still working with Jeff to try to come up with a date. So you can watch your e-bulletins to try to find out when that meeting will be. It will be virtual, so you can all
Do
come.
it on a social like this? You
Yeah,
think
it won't be, I think we'll do it separate from a social, I think, but it will be a Zoom meeting, a
Yeah,
virtual
okay.
meeting. And the league is
I'd be
organizing.
very interested in hearing that.
Yeah.
You all heard the virtual date has been pushed out to July 15th, if you have not.
Oh, really? Oh, yay.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
That's for town committees. That doesn't affect us.
I'm sorry, yes. Oh, I meant to just, for those of you who are on town committees.
Right.
Linda.
I don't know what she said.
Town meeting has been pushed out?
No,
No.
What?
What's virtual date?
The state has extended the
Yeah.
the ability to have
Oh.
virtual meetings for town.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. That was very convoluted. That was very
Right.
convoluted, Diane.
I know, but that's what we sometimes forget that those laws don't apply to us.
yes. Well, I didn't necessarily mean for you. I just,
know, but I
those of you on the
sometimes
call, you know.
sometimes forget that.
It would make
It's only-
sense to have that possibility all the time.
Well, talk to your state rep and state
Legislator.
senator.
Yes.
I don't think there's anything that precludes an open meeting having a virtual component as well.
Right.
I think the important thing is that the participants have the option to be at a regular, open
Right.
meeting.
Right.
I know conservation does not have the option to have a virtual meeting. We now opened it up again to virtual because COVID came back, in its own crazy way. But for a while there, we were meeting in person.
Was that
Now
your
we're going
vote?
back to that again. I'm sorry.
Was that your vote to do that?
My vote? No, it was
I mean,
not.
the Conservation Commission's vote.
I asked when I made the last meeting virtual by my requesting that, because I thought we should be a little bit more careful in what we were doing. And so 2 meetings became virtual, and we're back now in open session again.
So
In
who
person.
determines that?
In person.
Committee determines.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I'm
Well,
Some
old.
of the boards don't want to meet virtually. I know Board of Appeals does not want to meet virtually, and they don't.
Yeah.
You know,
Very few of them.
That's their choice.
I was in the minority, but they honored me. So.
Good.
But town
Okay.
meeting can't be virtual, I don't think, because you
No,
can't.
it cannot.
I don't-
Town meeting cannot be virtual.
right, cannot be, right.
Yeah,
I
I
think we'll
think,
morph into that at some point.
I do think that the arrangement at the academy is excellent.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, I don't think you can ask for a town that's doing more than it should be doing, because I
Right.
do a good job.
Okay, so usually we try to keep these meetings to an hour. So we're getting close, but is there anything else? We'd like to open it up if anyone else has anything else they want to ask us or any other subject to bring up. Just wave your hand or raise it, which I may or may not see. Oh, Kathy Lynch has raised her hand, it says. I did see that.
So this time I raised my hand.
Oh, good.
Anyway, you have a recording, so I just wanted to know when we'll learn about the recording. Will that be through a league?
Yeah,
Okay, great, thanks.
It's an unfiltered recording.
okay, and Denali, yep.
I just wanted to say that when somebody asked about having town meeting in a Zoom call, I was thinking, can you imagine how the votes would go? Let's count them. Count the hands. So
Exactly, that's an interesting point.
exactly. Marilyn, thank you very much.
Thank you for
That's
all
right.
you're doing,
Well-
Marilyn.
Yes, thank you. And Judy, did you want to say something?
I just want to say, I think the league has done a wonderful job with the civic, what engagements, that's because it's
Civic
very,
socials, yeah.
civic socials. Yeah. It's very, I think they're good. The different
thank you.
topics, they're interesting and they're easy for me to go to. I don't have to drive at night, which I don't like to do anymore.
I always learn
Right.
something. I always learn something.
Right. Well, thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll call it into it. Thank you. Thank you all for coming, Marilyn, especially. Thank you so
Yes.
much. You did a great
Good-
job. It was
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Night.
Okay.
Good night.